What to do if you suspect you have ADHD? Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. Hi, my name is Srishti Asthana Bisht. I'm a practicing psychologist, and today I'm going to talk to you about the steps that you can take in order to ensure you get the right answers. Okay, so the first step is defining what are you looking for from the diagnosis. Okay, why are you craving the diagnosis itself? Okay, so in the culture of TikTok, neurodivergence has come into the mainstream conversation, which is brilliant, which is so important, right? Because it is shifting the narrative of extreme neurodivergence being the only form of neurodivergence. So, the training of a lot of psychiatrists and mental health professionals, or our understanding of neurodivergent conditions, it comes from what we have seen being represented on media, or if we've come across any child with severe disability as a result of being neurodivergent, right? Being on the ADHD spectrum, or having an intellectual disability, etc. So there is that extreme representation in media that we've seen represented in society overall in the conversation. But thanks to social media, mild to moderate neurodivergence has also come into the conversation. Okay, but the trainings of a lot of mental health professionals is still happening in a space where they are exposed to neurodivergence only in a very black and white way. Either the person has a neurodivergent condition or they don't have it, right? So either they match what it looked like to them through their training. So their training was usually in a like a special school, for example, where there was a lot of examples of children who had a lot of sensory issues, who had a lot of behavioral issues, etc. And then in the practice, if an adult walks in who seems to be anxious, who seems to qualify for the diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder, and they don't go beyond that label of the generalized anxiety disorder many times, because just the intervention for generalized anxiety can make a lot of things very better for the person. Okay, so that's definitely a possibility. Sometimes that, two conditions are comorbid. Okay, they tend to happen together. So if someone has ADHD, it's possible that they'll have anxiety, clinical anxiety as well. So if you address the anxiety part, a lot of things might start to feel relatively better for the person. Okay, so often the emphasis goes towards diagnosing and treating just the anxiety part. Okay, so this shift in culture in mild to moderate neurodivergence coming into the mainstream conversation has been a boon to many people, because a lot of people have been able to identify, see themselves being represented, feel like finally I'm seen, I'm heard, my struggles have a name to it. Okay, and there are a lot of advantages to that, but there are some disadvantages as well. So this brings me to my first point. Why are you seeking diagnosis? A diagnosis is going to help you in having a label to why things have happened a certain way with me. So, for example, if you're an ADHD, you probably relate to the fact that in childhood you were either daydreaming or you were kind of too energetic in your classroom to the point where your teachers were often annoyed by you, right? So you have an answer to why that happened to me my entire life. And there is a cost that one pays for being neurodivergent. In the mainstream conversation, um, perhaps we are starting to see it as a boon, but we need to see it in the boon part as well, but also the difficult parts, the struggles. Okay. So there's a balanced perspective that's missing in the mainstream narrative and conversations when we're speaking about neurodivergence. Um, so what are you seeking from the diagnosis? Some people need the diagnosis in order to feel good about themselves. In what do I mean by that? They can validate themselves and have some self compassion, um, because now they're sure. Now a healthcare and it's a big symbolic thing to the mind as well, right? Like someone who's a healthcare professional who's much more experienced than you, they're validating that yes, you have this condition, and that's why you've had these set of experiences. It can be very powerful. But will the diagnosis of ADHD reduce your symptoms of ADHD itself? That is not going to happen. Okay. Many of us sometimes think that if we find the answer to why we are in a certain way, we'll have all the answers for life. We'll have the final turning point, and that's it. Iske baad happily ever after. Because that's the narrative on the media, right? Like, sometimes people find the answer and that's it. But finding that answer is only the first step into taking conscious steps and choices and decisions that accommodate your neurodivergence. It's also the beginning point of you advocating for yourself, validating your lived experiences, making space for other neurodivergent folks in your life, etc. So it's just the first point. It's not the last point. It's not the aha moment. It's not the big turning point. For some people, it may be, but mostly it won't be that way. Okay? So be sure of what you're seeking, right? Have realistic expectations when you are trying to pursue the diagnosis for yourselves. The second point is find a good clinical psychologist and get your psychometric assessment done. Declare your observations that because of so and so reasons, I feel I am neurodivergent, I have ADHD, and I'd like to get diagnosed. Okay. So, because of the training that I mentioned about mental health professionals, right, about it being very black and white, there are a lot of clinical psychologists who might be dismissive as well, a lot of psychiatrists who might be dismissive as well. Okay. But there are neurodivergence affirming clinical psychologists who don't look at it in black and white, and choose them. Find a clinical psychologist who's neurodivergence affirming. Go for the psychometric assessments and tests. Okay. When you declare to the clinical psychologist that I think I have ADHD, I'd like to get the diagnosis done, they are not going to only stick to ADHD testing. They have a way of functioning, and that's also the correct way of functioning. They need to rule out other comorbid conditions, other conditions that might be contributing to the symptomology which looks like ADHD. Sometimes they have to rule out the presence of other issues, other disorders that might be present, other tendencies of your personality also that might be present. And they will do a comprehensive test. Okay. So it can involve questionnaires, it can involve a clinical history taking, so listening to all about your childhood. So it's not going to be a you meet them once and you get the answer. It's not an astrology or a tarot card reading consultation. It's a clinical process. It's slow. It's going to take multiple sessions, and one part of it that is not there in the mainstream conversation is that it is expensive. It's an expensive process. Okay. So it is a financial investment, but it can be worth it for a lot of people. That's also something I'll mention. Okay. So be open to the clinical psychologist suggestion for all the other psychometric tools they might be using to rule out other conditions or bring to light other things that might be operating also. You need to have that trust. You need to have that confidence. Once you really research a clinical psychologist that you feel you can trust, okay, then you really need to trust their judgment, their clinical judgment and their opinion. And when you get the report, okay, that has the comprehensive analysis, you can ask the clinical psychologist, what does this mean, what does this mean, what does this mean, and educate yourself about everything that's on the report through processing it, perhaps in therapy, perhaps through therapy sessions with the main clinical psychologist. Sometimes what happens is a lot of people have a counseling psychologist, they've been working on a lot of issues, but some part of it is still a question mark, so then they go to a clinical psychologist. After you get the report, you can definitely process the things with your counseling psychologist as well in therapy, or if you're in therapy with the clinical psychologist themselves, you can process it with them. Okay. So accept that getting the diagnosis is just the first step. Okay. It's not the last step. It's not the the very glamorized aha turning point it can be for some, but not for everyone. So, this is the second thing, to be open to the range of assessments that might be recommended for you. Okay. As much as we want to believe that we are the experts, we're not. TikTok videos, YouTube channels, they can be guiding posts that make us curious and make us consider a possibility, but they are not it. They are not the arriving point. A YouTuber or a TikToker is not a healthcare professional. They have not dealt with hundreds and thousands of cases of a certain nature. They have not spent 7 to 10 years studying and reading about conditions. They are not interacting with as many patients. Many times, the people who are present on social media who are advocating for ADHD awareness are ADHDers themselves or friends of ADHDers, etc. But we need to take into consideration that one person, their story, the way it looked like for them, that's not the global truth. That's not the full spectrum of what it is. Okay. So once you find a clinical psychologist you can trust, they can definitely be the better source, the better guide, the better educator for you. Okay. The third thing would be to embrace this information and bring in changes. Okay. And slowly set on the journey of self advocacy, of making accommodations in your life, being gentler with yourself, being more patient with yourself and your progress and your journey, educating the people in your life, educating your best friends, your partner, your family members, sending them some videos. So if your parent is a Hindi speaker, okay, or a Tamil speaker or a Telugu speaker, send them videos in that language on ADHD. Let them be aware. Let them also understand that okay, there are a certain set of challenges, and yes, a person who's lived with you for your entire life, they've obviously noticed certain things. And in popular culture those things are often equated with a character flaw, your lack of desire. It's almost seen as you're not hustling enough, you're not trying hard enough, but it's not that. It's neurodivergence, it's ADHD, right? So these are the three steps to start with when you are thinking of getting an assessment done for yourself. Okay. I hope this video helps. I hope this can act as almost a guide when you're starting out on the diagnosis journey. And whatever your feedback is, feel free to comment about it. If you have a question, do let me know. If I missed out on something, feel free to comment and add that point as well. You can follow my channel for more such insights and videos on mental health topics. You can follow my Instagram page, and if you have any specific support that you'd like from me in terms of asking for resources, asking for reference of certain clinical psychologists, you can feel free to mail me. It will be mentioned in the description box. I will try my best to answer all the mails that I receive. Thank you for stopping by. Hope the information helped. Take care. I'll see you in my next video.